Alan Partridge. Well, hello and welcome into this Tuesday's entertainment news. I had to think about that there. It's Tuesday. I'm Jonathan C. Walsh. I'm the host for the stream here. Joining me to my left is Stephen John McLaughlin. He's the co-host on the stream show tonight, and we're going to be discussing two topics, Stephen. First and foremost, David Bowie, superstar, multi-character, generational singer-songwriter, force of nature, talent, and his potential desire, near-miss attempt to bring John Lennon and Paul McCartney back together again. I'm just going to continue calling Paul McCartney Paul McCartney. It's our running theme that I've been continuing every time we speak about him. Bring them together, Stephen, into a sort of super trio back in 1974, hence why on the thumbnail I tried my best to get images from that specific year of Jonathan. I had to AI upscale McCartney, that's why he looks about 20. And of course Bowie in the middle, looking very much his age. Lennon looking very much his age. McCartney looking like a fresh-faced boy coming out of Liverpool in 1959 or 60, going over to Hamburg to hit up the what was the name of that club, Stephen? Was it the Casbah?
Reaper Band. I can't remember.
Reaper Band was, that was the area. Can't remember. Something Star Club as well. I think that may have been that may have been the one where Harrison set fire to the condom on the wall and get deported. Nearly ending the Beatles before it started. But Steve, we're talking about that. We're going to talk about Heat 2. It's a sequel. It's coming out. I didn't know there was a Heat 2 novel, but we'll get into that, Stephen. First and foremost, Jonathan Lennon, Paul McCartney, John Long John and the Silver Bells. Try to give him his title. Johnny Rhythm. Stephen, what do you make about this story? Obviously, it's been brought out in guitarplayer.com. They've published this sort of article, this quote. Stephen, I've been following David Bowie for a long time. Love the guy's music, his career. I love the multi-personality, schizophrenic nature of his career. The Thin White Duke, Ziggy Stardust, all the other things that come and went with his career. The output the guy delivered. I knew he was close with John. On a sort of personal level, he collaborated with John a couple of times, I think. Not so close with Paul, but by all accounts, I seem to recall a video where he was quite critical of McCartney and his kind of music and how he never really connected with him, didn't really know him on a personal level. So with that in mind, Stephen, having knowledge of the three guys, their careers and where they were at different points in their careers, I've got to be honest, I didn't know this was a thing.
No.
This, to quote Phoebe Buffet, is brand new information.
Yeah,
and I'm not entirely sure of the provenance, for lack of a better word.
I think I take it with a pinch of salt, John, because obviously David Bowie's not longer with us. We've got some quotes in there. I don't know when these quotes took place. I don't know if it's obviously, I think it was BBC Six Music or something like that with Mark Riley, maybe about 20 odd years ago or something like that. So I didn't hear this. I didn't hear the show at the time. And I used to listen to, obviously, Mark Riley, Mark and Lard.
Back in the day, Back
in the day, in the 90s, the Shire Horses. But John, I mean, listen, you just got to take it as word, I suppose, from David Bowie. If it's coming out of his mouth, then perhaps maybe there was a suggestion. You've got to remember as well, I better be careful what I say here in terms of what they were doing that night. So I don't know if this is maybe something like the Lennon played bass with Elvis thing. He believes it, but did it really happen?
Smoked marijuana in Buckingham Palace.
I mean, I've seen that interview, John. I've seen that, the one you're talking about in terms of Bowie saying that he doesn't really like Paul's stuff. He doesn't like his music, but he says he's a nice guy and all that kind of thing. But these stories come up every now and again, and I'm always like, why is it only coming up now? I know this is obviously from 20 odd year ago, this conversation, but even still, there's still a long gap between the events that they were talking about in early 2000s. That is a good 30 odd years, isn't it? So it's still something that's really weird. I was watching one the other day.
To be fair to Bowie, though, Stephen, Bowie's memory is tip top, man. When he was here, alive and kicking, he had phenomenal recall because he told that infamous story about Mick Jagger and seeing the Stones for the first time, and Mick replying to a sort of guy, a heckler in the crowd, telling him to get his hair cut. What about that, you? So he had phenomenal memory. So I don't doubt if he said this and the quotes are attributable to him that it actually did happen.
As I said, I'm not going to say it didn't happen. I wasn't there, and I'm not going to doubt David Bowie if he says something happened. It could have been something, that was just very much like John and Paul talking about going down and doing the Saturday Night Live thing. It was something that they thought was a good idea in the spur of the moment, but the longer they sort of talked about it, they realised it wasn't such a great idea.
Yeah.
When I was watching Elliot Mintz on YouTube, he was being interviewed by Billy Corgan on his YouTube channel. I don't know if you've watched that at all.
Elliot Mintz has got a fucking YouTube channel.
He was talking about, Elliot Mintz was talking to Billy Corgan about a time that him,
Elliot Mintz.
I don't know if May Pang was there. Paul McCartney and John Lennon all went out for a meal in the mid-70s now. And it was about, they didn't like the menu, they didn't like what was on. It was, I suppose, a very popular restaurant in New York. They all went and they ended up ordering pizza through the back door. It was fascinating, John, and you get taken in because you can just imagine that sort of scenario. But then you're thinking, why have I never heard this story before? You always think you've read everything, you've heard everything, and then something else comes up. And this is very similar. John, the actual clip is on YouTube. Mark Riley interviews David Bowie in 2004 for anyone that wants to check it out.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating. Whether it's true or not, I'm going to believe David in this instance. I don't know if it was a good idea or not, to be honest with you.
Well,
the more I think about it, I went, nah, I don't
well, they needed a drummer for a start. A phenomenal rhythm guitarist who can make it fucking howl, in his own words, when he wants. And obviously we know Paul's acumen on the bass, one of the greatest bassists ever for me. I know people think of John Entwistle and they think of other guys when they think of great bassists, but for me, Paul's right up there. Doesn't really get his flowers. Yeah. He's that good at everything else, that songwriting, that creating incredible melodies, the vocal range, the look, the aura, the Beatles. I think people often overlook just how good a bass player the guy actually was and is. I mean, you just need to get back to... We've done it, Stephen. Listen to Beatles songs, and if you can almost isolate the different instruments, you can tell on an instrumental level what the song is just by listening to the bass or listening to the drums. That's how talented they were. So we know we would have had a bassist. Obviously, Bowie can sing, he's the front man. The three of them can sing, so you could get unbelievable harmonies. Drummer-wise, I don't know how they'd have made it work on a drumming level. I suppose you could have got any wafer stray session drummer in. Could have got Ringo in. But on a musical level, I think it would have been fucking unbelievable. I mean, Steve, for me, these are the three greatest singer-songwriters that Britain's ever put out to the world. I have Lennon and McCartney first, and I have Bowie second. Maybe Elton in there at third. So you're talking about the top three singer-songwriters to ever walk the earth from the United Kingdom. All in the one group. I mean, you talk about a super group. Doesn't get any better than that for me. How the personalities would have meshed together is another thing entirely. We know that John and Paul were fractured at best. Round about that point, I don't know if they'd made up fully. I don't know when the kiss and make-up kind of thing happened. I know in the late 70s they were definitely on a better standing.
Yeah.
We know, like I says, Bowie was pretty close to John. I don't know how they worked on a personality level, Stephen. That's what makes the great bands so great.
This is what I was going to touch on, John, is the fact that, that although one or two of them out of the three might have thought it was a good idea, perhaps, there was a lot of humouring going on as well, because I think reading that sort of story about them turning up at his door at 3 a.m, what kind of mental state...
Yeah, I need to read these quotes,
and I think in terms of John and Paul, I think they were still I think he actually mentions in this article about that this was probably one of the first times they sort of spent any time together after the Beatles. So the relationship was still a little bit frosty, not in a bad way, just try to do that reconnecting thing again. It's like, John, when you've not seen a family member for a long time, you just get into that conversation. Sometimes it's not a deep dive and you get into that conversation right away. Sometimes it's some small talk just to get to know each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Bowie's kind of touching on here, that 1 minute they were sort of in tune with each other and the next they were quite distant. But that's natural if you've not really spent any time with that person in the last 4 or 5 years, especially with all this sort of shit that was going on in the early 70s between Paul and John. Yeah, and the personal stuff as well.
Name calling through obviously songs,
So I can imagine David Bowie probably very keen on this at that moment, and that was probably as much as it went. I don't know how much. I'm not trying to say John Lennon and Paul McCartney were trying to humour David Bowie. David Bowie's a very intelligent guy. You can read people. He's a very good people person, and they would have known whether or not it was fake or not, their sort of behaviour. But
and even by that point, Stephen Bowie was established. The guy was a name at that point, so it's not like it was these two.
Probably a good idea for about 5 minutes, and then they just thought, nah, I don't think so. And I'm glad they didn't, John, to be honest with you. Love David Bowie, love Paul McCartney, love John Lennon, but to have the three of them together, it's probably the stuff of dreams for a lot of people, but for me, no, I don't think it would have been that great.
Well, Stephen, you just have to look at how Paul got on with Wings and the constant comparisons to the Beatles. Lennon never really had that because he never really worked in a band set, and again after the Beatles he was very much house dad, solo artist, putting out stuff. And we'll start out of his solo career, and I think it's underrated. A lot of people talk about George, talk about the Wings, and they kind of overlook Lennon's solo output. And I've had arguments with these cretins on YouTube and other places where he never had a one good song. Absolute fucking bollocks. I can rhyme off 20 probably off the top of my head. If you put me in the spot, I may struggle, but I mean, I'm off the top of my head. Mother, God, Walls and Glass. It's fucking him, isn't it? Walls and Glass.
Walls and Bridges.
Fucking
Glass.
Yeah, the one on Walls and Bridges. Beef Jerky's a great song. Mind Games, Ice Mason. So many great fucking songs the guy put out. Then you go into the last sort of two he put out, and just about every song he put on those albums was phenomenal. So the guy had a great solo output, but it never did hit the levels of the Beatles. Let's not be fooled here. It was never at that level. Obviously, Imagine's another one. Instant Karma. How Do You Sleep? Crippled Inside. They're all great fucking songs. Not at the level of the Beatles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know where I was going with that. I've lost my train of thought trying to rhyme off Lennon songs. Needless to say, I don't...
About solo careers, John.
Yeah, he never worked in a band setting, so the comparisons they would have had working with Bowie, they'd just have been burdened by trying to surpass or even equal what they'd accomplished in the Beatles. I mean, Mac is at the age now where he doesn't give a shit, he's just doing it for fun. But it must be incredibly fucking difficult when you've reached the summit in terms of output, creative brilliance, to get back on sort of, I don't know what you call it, metaphorical horse, and try and go for it again and again. And critics constantly try to take snipes at you. He's over the hill, he's not getting near what the Beatles... I mean, you've even seen the likes of Keith Richards passing critique on the solo careers of the Beatles. They never got to the level they were at again. Well,
yeah.
At least they had the balls to go out and do something fucking on their own. They're not hanging about wrinkled, doing the same shit 60 years later.
According to David Bowie, he said they actually asked me if I'd be kind of join the two of them and become a trio with them, and we changed the name to something else, David Bowie and the Beatles. That's terrible. I don't like that. They liked the idea there'd be two, like DBB. I think they wanted to call it DBB. Sadly, it was all a long night's pipe dream. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm not doubting David Bowie, witnessed this, and he was asked this, but it just seems like...
Was he on the heroin at this point? That was late 80s, wasn't it? The Berlin era. Thin White Duke.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to picture whether this is a drug-fueled haze and sort of drug fever dream. And they weren't really there. It was like an ironing board and a fridge. And he thought it was, look, you're a former associate of yours, Stephen, I'm not going to put names out there, who spoke about their dabbling with acid and speaking to a talking crocodile, which was actually an ironing board. Drugs do funny things to the mind. But I mean, again, the guys had brilliant recall in previous sort of interviews about things that happened, so I don't dispute that these Paul and John went and spoke to him. Ultimately, it didn't happen. Obviously, we had other near misses, Stephen, with getting them back. Obviously, what charities were trying, or not charities, but what very people with deep pockets were trying to coerce the Beatles back time and again, and they had to fight. Obviously, post John's death, they were trying to coerce them, and George was sort of vetoing it because he felt in his mind it would never be the same without John. As you mentioned, the whole Saturday Night Live performance, they did dabble, didn't they? They had interactions in LA during the Lost Weekend era and potentially thought about recording. So there was opportunities in the 70s for them to get back together. But ultimately, Stephen, I agree with you. I just don't think it would have worked. Even that great sort of triumvirate, if you like, of minds of songwriting ability, I just don't think it would have worked because the Beatles were the Beatles. They were the greatest of all time. For me, they're still the greatest band on earth, and two of them are gone. How do you best that output? They don't have to be in a super band or a super group because they were in a fucking super group.
And David Bowie doesn't have to be in.
He doesn't either, no.
Certainly that period in his career as well. You know, I always thought it was incredible. You know, the Travelling Wilburys and what they managed to achieve, because Bob Dylan was a touring artist still at this point, and so was Tom Petty. You know, he was the youngest of the five, and you know, it made sense that George Harrison, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to George Harrison, but it made sense for George, Jeff Lynne and Roy Orbison to form, but to get Bob Dylan and Tom Petty into that band as well was phenomenal.
It was, even that was later on though, Stephen, wasn't it, when you think about it? Roy Orbison, very much the 60s he came up.
Yeah.
Into the later stages of his career. Dylan,
he's light.
60s, later, exactly. Later stages of his career comparative to when he came out. Jeff Lynne, fair enough, but was ELO not late 70s?
Yeah.
So he's already 10 years into his sort of career.
Bowie was at the height of his powers, you know,
so it's much
during
harder.
this conversation, you know, so it would have been interesting if they may have done something experimental, but I definitely wouldn't have put it out as David Bowie and the Beatles. That's
that's bullshit. Yeah.
Idea. Horrible.
It's not the Beatles.
No.
It's not John Lennon and Paul McCartney. You're totally disregarding what Ringo and George were bringing the act, as they like to say back in the day. So, that's a terrible fucking name. They had to come up with something a bit better. I'm saying that John never performed in a band set, and he technically didn't. It was still during the Beatles, but the Dirty Mac.
Oh, right, I thought you were talking about the band The Motherfuckers.
Dirty Mac. He was in a super group. It was fucking Keith Richards, Clapton. What was the drummer again? Was it Mitch Mitchell?
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix, yeah.
Fucking unbelievable. I mean, what a fucking super band that is. So I've just completely disregarded everything I've said. I'm talking absolute shite. Ultimately, Stephen, it's a shame we didn't get the opportunity to even explore this post-1980. That's the biggest disappointment, because that fat fucking oxygen-thieving piece of shit also snuffed out. Yeah, exactly. Snuffed out Lennon's life prematurely. Yeah. And we could have had a sort of Travelling Wilburys kind of set up, moving later into his life, into his career, where he would have dabbled with the likes of Bowie or maybe even other big acts. And we could have seen something special. I just don't think in the mid-70s, early 70s, it would have been the right time for it.
No, for any of the three of them, John.
No. Mac is in the middle of Wings at that point.
Yeah, I mean, he's got no reason to go down that road, and John's just about to get into his sort of semi-retirement as well, in the following year. So his mind, I think he's got issues, obviously, with immigration at this point as well. And I think it all worked out the way it was supposed to work out, John, I'll be honest with you. Would I have loved to have seen it? Probably curiosity would have probably got the better of me. Yes, I would have loved to have heard some kind of, sound from the three of them just to see what it would have been like. But we got it with Bowie and Lennon, with Fame, I suppose.
It would have been great to see McCartney and Lennon working together again in some capacity, though, just purely to see what sort of output they would have delivered in a writing sense. Because those two together was magic. And again, that fat fucking waste of space robbed
John,
the world of that.
I honestly do believe that eventually, if John had not been murdered, the Beatles would have got back together. Perhaps maybe for Live Aid.
Yeah.
In '85. But if not that, it would have been some other reason. I think they would have. I think it was sort of heading that way eventually, But it wasn't to be, unfortunately, and it's all what ifs, and this is another what if, isn't it?
The biggest what if, Stephen, and the biggest annoyance is the Anthology in the early 90s, mid-90s. Imagine John Lennon alive and his input into that, and the four of them bantering and back and forth. How much better that would have been. They've done a great job keeping his presence there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not going to take away the importance of John Lennon from the Beatles. He was as important as any of them in that band. But I do think there is certainly when the Anthology came out, that there was that angle of John not being there that intrigued people enough, and obviously Freezer, Bird and Real Love coming out as well. It would have been different. That's what I'm trying to say. It would have been a different approach. The audience, the fans, if John had not been killed, it would have been a different sort of way we looked at the Beatles Anthology. It would have been a different way we looked at all four members as well. It would have probably been the same as our mindsets in the 70s before 1980. That hoping one day that they get back together to do something, and it would have been monumental, no doubt about it. But I think in terms of our sort of perception on that project, it would be certainly different, because I think there is that sort of missing John a bit from the fans and obviously from the Threetles as well. That's the reality of it, and what's left, as George said, at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I think in terms of this, I think Fame is as close as we're going to get to a Beatle and Bowie, and that's just the way it goes, as I say. So yeah, it would have been interesting, but I don't know if it would have worked. I'm kind of intrigued, but kind of glad at the same time it didn't happen.
I'm glad, Stephen, for Bowie as well, because Bowie's got this reputation of being, like I said, this multi-personality performer, but he went through different stages, and he was very much a soul guy. I mean, he did collaborate with other artists, but when you think of Bowie, you think of this soul entity. You don't think of him in a sort of band setting. So if you were to then introduce him into a trio act with Lennon and McCartney, I think that lessens his career, and which is fucking mental to say, because those two are so special, and he's special. But I don't know, it feels it's unnecessary. Looking back with hindsight now, it's unnecessary.
John and Paul getting back together again, that would be the main focus from everyone, unintentionally. As much as you are maybe the biggest Bowie fan, your focus would still be on John Lennon, Paul McCartney. Wow, they've got back together, and Bowie would be in a sort of shadow, in that situation. And that you can't have that. And
as special as Bowie is, and he is special.
Yeah,
I think Paul and John, their personalities, I just think their presence would have completely like you said, Stephen, outshone him. He'd have became an irrelevance. I think people genuinely underestimate just how big a presence those two guys are. I mean, George is a special performer. I've just singing his praises on the guitar again before we started. But he was fucking a side act. Ringo got #1 in America, side act. They laughed at in the Beatles. So not many people can hang with those two when they're full four. So I'm kind of glad it didn't happen in the end. I'd rather they just... I'm happy with the way it played out, apart from Lennon getting fucking assassinated outside the Dakota building.
Yeah, exactly.
If that didn't happen, then it would have been even better, but I'm kind of happy the way things worked out. They worked out pretty well for all involved. So
I think so, John. I think
from John.
it was the right time as well because, as much as I think they might have got back for a reunion concert for a charity purpose or whatever, just there's not many bands out there that can bookend their sort of
do you think
existence.
they'd have done another album, Stephen, if John hadn't been? Because I do think they'd have toured. I think they'd have get back together, maybe Live Aid, or maybe it would have been as late as the 90s for an Anthology, and they would have probably toured the world, but I don't think they'd have ever put another album out. If Lennon's that crazy, I think he'd have probably went back and reworked the whole back catalogue, because he was talking about that when he was here, and infuriating George Martin.
Yeah, too much of George Martin's annoyance, yeah.
So I think he'd have probably done that, if anything.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd have brought another album out.
Again, it's all what ifs. I think the way it panned out was the way it was supposed to go. And people, they see pictures of Klein and them signing the papers over it, but it was going to happen at some point. I think having Klein in there, Yoko Ono, it was just sort of speeding the process up. George and Ringo had already stepped away, during '68 at the White Album sessions, and came back. So the friction was there before. It all really started during, the sort of the passing of Brian Epstein. Yep. And it was from there, it was downhill for three of them, and it was uphill for one of them, because Paul's sort of drive carried the band for the last 2-3 years. I'm grateful he did, because we get so many great songs, from that White Album. Let It Be in Abbey Road. But I'm glad the way it kind of. I'm not glad the way the personal sort of relationships finished, but in terms of the back catalogue of the Beatles, it's a good period to end on, the beginning of the 70s, because the Beatles are much a 60s product, and they always will be. And I'm glad they ended it when they did.
Yeah, Stephen, it's just from a sort of legacy standpoint, they get out at the top. They'll always be viewed as being at the top.
I think in terms of popularity, they were always popular anyway, but you think of Zeppelin were coming through and Floyd, etc. The music was sort of evolving into something different than what it was in the 60s at this point anyway. So, I'm glad it happened. I'm glad, because we can look back on that collection of work, that body of work from those four guys, and go, that was an incredible amount of output from four people in a very short period of time at a very high standard.
And inspiring, Stephen, I think the likes of Radiohead and Blur and other bands of that ilk to try and go on a journey, a similar journey, where they start out as something and then they evolve into something completely different at the end of their sort of. I mean, even R.E.M. to an extent, even though I know Stipes doesn't like the Beatles, which is fair enough.
Yeah,
but I mean, you think that you spoke about it, Stephen, and where they were in the 80s to, what was it, Monster?
Yeah.
And the change in sound. It was completely something. It's something completely different. Obviously, it's not as extreme as maybe Blur or Radiohead, where Radiohead have just went on a fucking crazy journey. Blur, crazy journey, evolved. They've maybe inspired just by that limited time together, the diversity of the sort of music they created, other bands, to keep freshening things up. I don't know, maybe I'm talking shite. I don't know. Maybe there's other artists who've done it, but I can't think of anybody better. I mean, everyone goes on about Dylan, rightly so. He's dabbled with country and western, the nasally voice, but in the end it's Bob Dylan. It's still the electric sound, the country stuff, he kind of changed, but it's still Dylan. Yeah. Bowie, really fucking, I mean, he is mental changing, his sound changing, his look, but it's still Bowie. I can't think anybody that's went from sort of heartthrob boy fucking pop band in the 60s to
timing had a lot to do with it though, John. I think timing had a lot to do with it, because the Beatles were the first at a lot of things. Yeah. So that the novelty of that carried through, and as you said, Bowie forever changing, he was always David Bowie, and that voice was always prominent and consistent.
I mean, Space Boys, to be fair, from Space Oddity, I mean, that's a change.
Yeah, Hello Space Boy, yeah.
Hello Space Boy.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but it sounds like a Pet Shop Boys song, with Bowie lending his voice to them. But
Do you like
yeah, I
as
mean, I
a
don't think there is many
voice?
done. I think in terms of the way they evolved, and it wasn't like a deliberate thing. I'm trying to think of the band you like, John, Alex Turner,
Arctic Monkeys.
Arctic Monkeys, yeah.
Yeah, they've
I
tried, but he
done
just
that.
became a
It's a
crooner.
deliberate thing, though. It's it's deliberate. They're doing that purposely. Radiohead did it as well with one of their albums as well, didn't they?
Yeah, went to electronic.
And Primal Scream as well did it. But but with the Beatles, it was a progression thing. It was you could see that we can look back on that catalogue and do that. But I think at the
It was
time it was
organic.
more
With the era, with
experimental,
technology.
and pursuing musical knowledge. All four of them, they were all hungry for it. They were all hungry to learn how to produce as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Arctic Monkeys, it's not organic. Turner's just turned into this sort of... I mean, I still like the guy, but he's turned into I don't want to say the word because it's not a word I use, so I'm going to say something completely different. He's turned into a bit of a prick. He's a bit of a prick, a pretentious prick. Turned into a sort of Engelbert Humperdinck crooner kind of thing where everything's at half the speed. So he's singing Mardy Bum and it's now in Mardy Bum, I've seen your frown and it's like looking down the barrel of a gun and it goes off. Up come all these words, it's half the speed. For fuck's sake, Alex, if you're going to play a song from 2006 or 7 when you were 18, fucking do it right, mate. Play it at the right tempo. Don't slow it down. Nobody's here to fucking hear that. If you're going to sing like that, sing, I don't know, Tranquility Base, Hotel and Casino. Sing something like that.
What do you call those things with the tier list? One of Beatles songs, and we, just working our way through that, from Please Please Me right up to Let It Be, Abbey Road, whatever way you want to look at it. Just doing that progression thing where we were going through all the songs and the first album predominantly cover versions, and then the second album had some cover, and then I think by the time we got to A Hard Day's Night, it was predominantly Lennon and McCartney with maybe a Harrison song in there. And then you get to Rubber Soul and it's all original content or original compositions, John. And they never look back after that. That's progression for you, that's learning your trade, and that's one of the fascinating things about that band.
Stephen, like I said, the technological aspect, they're experimenting in the studio and they're working with great engineers, the likes of Jeff Emmerich and Glyn Jones or Johns and George Martin, and they're finding the flanger effect and they're finding backward guitar stuff. George is bringing in sitars. They're just experimenting. It's just, it was a time of fucking incredible pioneering.
Away from being an artist, David Bowie was a great producer as well and a good songwriter. Working closely with the Velvet Underground, with Lou Reed, etc., in the late 70s. So his path didn't exactly go off the rails or anything like that because this scenario never happened.
No.
He went on from strength to strength, as you said, John. So I think in terms of Bowie's career, it certainly worked out for him not doing that, whereas I think that might have actually hindered it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Strangely, working with those two incredible people, I think it would have been a bad thing for Bowie, ultimately. I think what makes Bowie Bowie is the fact that he was on his own 2 feet. He was a single entity. It worked with brilliant, maybe session guitarists and whatnot, but ultimately you think of Bowie, you think of him on his own. You don't think of John Lennon. Oh, you remember that time when he worked with John Lennon and Paul McCartney? It's just David Bowie putting out excellence.
I think of people like Lou Reed, and I think of people like Mick Ronson.
And Jagger to an extent as well. He worked with Jagger, didn't he, in the 80s? But it's still Bowie.
Dancing in the Street,
But it's
I
still
think
Bowie.
that was a charity song, wasn't it? Was that not for comic relief? I think it was. I think it was for charity. They did that.
And
it was a good video. I get a laugh at it.
Freddie Mercury as well, Under Pressure.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, 1981 was it?
Yeah,
something like that.
So he did collaborate with other artists, but it wasn't like a long-term thing, like doing an album. It was one song and then done. And ultimately it went back to being David Bowie. You can't do one song with him. Well, you could have done one song with John Lennon and Paul McCartney, but yeah, I'm glad they didn't. But Stephen, shall we move on to the second topic on the entertainment news. This is a show or stream or podcast, whatever adjective you want to use to describe this. Ultimately, we're discussing news that intrigues us. Hopefully, it intrigues other people who are tuning in to watch. Stephen, it's Heat, a sequel to Heat. Heat 2.
It's a sequel prequel.
A sequel prequel. I had to search up Heat 2, and yeah, you're right, it's a prequel.
Yeah.
Which has changed my whole mind. I mean, I'm not for Heat 2. I'll get that off my chest right now. I think it's a fucking terrible idea. I don't know why. I mean, he's tried to give us his reasoning in the article. He says we're in the middle of a sort of backlash against comic book movies, and I think it's time for people to start being receptive to things like Heat 2 and this kind of genre having a renaissance. It's almost like Meg Ryan with rom-coms, but in this case it's a crime action. I don't think that genre's ever left. I'm not going to lie, it's been consistently there for my entire lifetime. Crime action movies.
Heat. I loved it.
That was one of the greatest movies of all time.
The mid 1990s. I think I was 18 or 19 at the time when this came out, and it's all I spoke about with my workmates at the time, and they'd seen the film. You know, I get obviously the big thing was Al Pacino and Robert De Niro sharing screen time for the first time, and they do it twice in the film, and incredible sequences, you know, and great acting. But then you've got Val Kilmer, John Voight in there as well, and Danny Trejo's in it. You know, so Tom Sizemore. There's a lot of big personalities in this film, and I mean, it's I always thought it was a one and done. Reading the article in terms of Michael Mann, is it?
Yeah.
The director and obviously the writer of the novel, which came out about 2 or 3 years ago. And reading the sort of idea behind it, this is the kind of thing that would have worked probably about 1998, when you could have maybe got Pacino back. Obviously, spoiler alert, folks, if you've not seen Heat, Robert De Niro's character dies at the end, so he'll not be in the sort of
but it's a prequel
moments. It's set back, and they're talking about Adam Driver playing the Robert De Niro character as the younger version of him.
He's way too tall, though, isn't he? 6'4", fuck's sake.
It's rumoured.
De Niro's my height.
Capital's supposed to be rumoured as well, John. But it doesn't matter who they throw into this. The story was contained, you know, and it was done. I get he's got an attachment to these characters, and he's want to continue this thing, but I think it's just 30 years too late, if I'm being honest with you. This is the kind of thing you might have followed up in the late 90s with. You know, you could have possibly got Al Pacino back to do some scenes for the sequel sequences, you know, and obviously Val's no longer with us now.
Yeah.
I get his character has got a big part to play in this, the prequel parts of the second film, if you like, which sounds really weird saying that. But John, I'm not really up or down about it. Heat's, as I said, it's a very much a contained story. It's a contained moment in film history as well, getting that cast together. An incredible film, John, from start to finish. It's very frenetic if you look at it. Funnily enough, and like most films, like Michael Mann films or Martin Scorsese films, I tend to watch them once, because once is enough. It doesn't mean it's a bad film because I only watch it once and it doesn't have rewatchability. Of course it does. But these films are an experience for me, you know, and it's that first time experience. You can't get that back.
No.
Watching it again.
I was very young, Stephen, when I first seen this film. I remember vividly watching it. I remember the scene of him obviously in the restaurant. And I loved that kind of shit. I even the Fugitive, where you've got these two sort of characters who are cat and mousey, and they're kind of, I don't know, really big personalities, and then they finally get together on the screen. It's riveting.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, and then obviously the ending, it was fucking poetic, because they were almost like two peas in a pod, yin and yang of each other, but very similar. And he's almost fucking grieving that he's had to take him out. And it's just, you get these two actors of that standard together to perform in that role. I mean, that is an event, Stephen, having Robert De Niro and Al Pacino together. Yeah. Not long after Pacino's won an Academy Award for the first time in his career. I think it was maybe 2 years later, after Scent of a Woman.
Scent of a Woman?
So, no. I mean, the guy was in his absolute pomp. De Niro was still producing wonderful movies before he started phoning it in. And even then he was fucking great, because I remember Analyse This and whatnot, and that was much later on, early 2000s, and he was still pretty good. Meet the Fockers, he was the father, wasn't he, in that? Still good, different but good. I can't see how you recapture that lightning in a bottle. Understand it's man and he's invested in it, but how do you recapture what made Heat so special without having Pacino and De Niro and Kilmer, and these big Val Kilmer was a fucking superstar in 1995. The guy was an absolute superstar. He'd been in Top Gun, he'd been in starring Batman, I think, or had been in Batman.
Same year. Yeah, it was the same year, yeah.
The guy was a superstar. You've got
John,
massive personalities.
1995, and I'm going to use another film as an example, because again, it's a contained storyline that doesn't merit a sequel or a prequel. The Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
It's like doing that to that film. And I'm like, why? We don't need that. We've got a perfectly good film there. I get you might want to continue these characters, but again, it should have been done 30 years ago.
Yeah, because
I'll keep going back to that.
Yeah, because the actors are no longer here.
Yeah,
some of them, and then the other ones are too old. The main guys are too old now. And we've seen in The Irishman. If you try to age them, they just don't move like they used to move. They're fucking old.
Well, they don't physically as well, but I think in terms of the sort of mental presence as well, it's not the same as it was.
And in Pacino's case, he doesn't even speak the same.
Because, no, he doesn't. But it's, I know they were playing actual, real people in The Irishman. But in terms of performances, I thought they were very good. But there's an edge not there anymore because they're elderly men. It's just, I don't know what it is. It's the physicality is a big part of it. But I think in terms of their delivery as well, it's not as it was. Whereas in Heat, I think this was peak Pacino. This was peak De Niro.
Yeah.
And I would say peak Val Kilmer as well.
So, definitely peak Val, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think...
Tombstone was a couple of years earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely peak Val.
I mean, he's third billing, in 1995 in this film. That's crazy when you think about it, but that shows the pulling power of the two sort of top billing actors. Yeah, I mean, I don't
even
really want to see. I love Adam Driver. And I think Michael Mann as a filmmaker and a writer is a very good writer and stuff like that. But I think perhaps maybe it would have been better than just doing a fresh story. Using that novel to do a fresh story that's not get anything. Don't call it Heat 2, whatever you do. Do something else with Adam Driver, because Adam Driver's a phenomenal actor, and if you can get him on board to do something gritty, a crime thriller, a heist or whatever it may be, I'm on board for that.
And Stephen, we've seen this guy in so many different movies now. I mean, was it House of Gucci? Yeah. Ferrari? He was really good in that. Marriage Proposal. He was even decent in Star Wars, fucking car crash movies that they were. He was not the problem. So this guy is a phenomenal actor. So I'm not doing down on Adam or Michael Mann, but it's just, I've got serious concerns about taking a movie that's 30 odd years old and trying to bring it into the modern era with an all new cast, and it's a prequel. I just don't think audiences are the same as what they were back then. They've not got the attention span. It's just different era. And look, I understand there's quotes in here. We're in the middle of doing things budget, and that's not the quote I'm looking for. It's, what is it? He's talking about comic book movies being done and whatnot. Fucking hell, I've lost it. I've lost the thought there.
It's John speaking to NME.
Yeah, so it's here. Yeah, it's a huge brand, Heat. I don't know that Heat is a brand, mate. It's a singular movie that is one of the greatest movies ever made. And again, that's a selling point. Much like Shawshank Redemption, much like you said, Usual Suspects, movies of that time which were singular stories. That's this unique selling point in 2025, that you've not got fucking sequels and universes getting spawned out of it. Back then, they just made great singular movies and left them as singular movies. And they didn't have to spawn a trilogy. I don't think Heat's a brand. It's just a movie that's respected for what it is. A singular story that had 3 acts, brilliant performances, and it'll not be topped. I mean, you're not topping The Usual Suspects, you're not topping Heat, you're not bringing out a Heat 2 with Adam Driver, you don't care who you cast. You're not beating the performances in that first movie. So you're right up, we just spoke about fucking John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Not getting together with David Bowie, in my mind, it would have been a mistake because they would have been held up against the Beatles. These guys are getting held up against Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in the mid-90s. Try to outdo the performance. How are you going to do it? It's not going to happen. There's some studios I've done within the industry, people are getting tired of superhero movies and are becoming more interested in pictures like Heat. I agree with that. But then people were always interested in pictures like Heat. I'm into superhero movies and I love Heat.
Yeah.
The two are not exclusive.
It's an original film, John. It's not a reboot. It's not a sequel. It's not, it's its own thing. You know, when it came out, it was phenomenal. And word of mouth of it as well was incredible, John. Pre-internet, just people talking about it. People talking about it in their workplace. Not talking about it in school because you shouldn't have been watching it, kids. But just talking about it in general, in the cinema, in the sort of foyer in the cinema, just these performances. And John, you talk about that diner scene, and it's one of the most incredible, interesting, tense moments in cinema.
Yeah.
Not just in that film, but in cinema. Just between these two powerful figures, one on the side of the law, one on the other side against the law, and the pursuit and the sort of cat and mouse sort of angle that they took this story in was phenomenal. And as you said, Heat 2's got a lot to live up to, and it doesn't matter who you cast in this. Adam Driver is a phenomenal actor, but even putting him up against maybe Leonardo DiCaprio
that
in
was
a
the
diner
talk,
scene.
that was the rumours. They were going to bring Leonardo in.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's as much as I love Leonardo DiCaprio and Adam Driver, they're not going to be able to top that.
Stephen, the other problem is with it being a prequel, we know how it ends. And what made Heat so incredible, like you said, first time viewing, you even lose the impact after multiple viewings. The first time viewing, what made it so incredible is you don't know what's going to happen with these characters. You're edge of the seat, joining them on the journey, and then it plays out and you know how it ends.
I'm trying to remember, John, there was a film that came out a few years after De Niro and Pacino. I can't remember what it was. But again, it didn't have a good film, as I recall. I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called, but it didn't have the same impact. Yeah, it didn't have the same impact on. And the reason it didn't have the same impact was because it'd already been done in Heat. That was one of the big things about that film was these two
Righteous Kill.
actors. Righteous Kill, yeah. Another good film, John. Very good film. But that aspect is taken away because it's already been done. And my dad, who's a big Robert De Niro fan, he likes Al Pacino, but I'm more of a De Niro fan because of films like The Deer Hunter and Taxi Driver. Was excited for this because these two, although technically they were in the same film, Godfather Part 2, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They never shared any screen time because I think the timelines were different, weren't they? So,
De Niro was playing Don Corleone when he was younger.
Yeah, the young, yeah. And I think that's where Michael Mann might have got the idea of doing the prequel, sequel thing, so in between the story of Heat, playing around either side of that narrative. I get it's an okay idea, it is, but I think it's just too late. I think he's left it 30 years too late for me. Much the same as George Lucas with the prequel trilogy. In the 90s, it should have been done, George.
That's the exact comparison that should be made as to why it isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Because ultimately the main selling point is De Niro and Pacino. That's why people wanted to see it. It's why people are still interested in it 30 years later, because of these two guys. They've only worked together in 4 movies in their career. One movie, like you said, they weren't even on the screen, sharing the screen together. So Heat, Righteous Kill and The Irishman. So it's an event when these two guys get together. And you could argue out of the 4, Heat, the one they face off, is by far the best I mean, Godfather Part 2 for me is one of the greatest movies of all time, but they don't share the screen. It's the son and the father when he's the son's age. That's the whole point. It's showing you the journey of Michael Corleone, how he's fallen into the pitfalls to an extent and unwittingly becoming this fucking monster. Whereas the two of them are together. So it's the best the two have ever done in terms of output together on the screen. That's the selling point.
Yeah, definitely.
The sequel, being a prequel, you need to have those characters in there. They're not there. Therefore, you don't have a selling point. And understand what he's saying. 20 years, rentals. He wrote the novel. First week, it was instantly #1 in New York Times bestseller. That's because with the novel, people are picturing De Niro and Pacino. It's now 2025. One's in his fucking 80s. Let's find out. Robert De Niro, how old is he? He's 82. Al Pacino is 85. They're too old to do that kind of movie. So it's doomed to fail. And it's not to do with the script, it's not to do with the characters, it's the actors. It's not to do with the actors that are getting cast either. You bring in fucking Leonardo DiCaprio and Adam Driver, they're two of the best actors on the planet just now, but nah. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, Robert De Niro's character gets killed off anyway in the original.
I'm just thinking the prequel aspect though. If you're telling the story of the two and how they built to that event, I don't know how it's going to work, Stephen. I've not read the novel.
I mean, the only thing that could work really is getting De Niro in to narrate, do an audio sort of monologue or whatever, when Adam Driver's playing the younger version of him or whatever it is. I don't know. I think they should just leave it, John. I think Michael Mann should maybe make a really good crime thriller out of the material from that novel. Just rebrand it,
Yeah, I love how I love how it's always these crime sort of directors who want to save the movies. The movies don't need saving. You just need to keep releasing great movies. People will watch them. I've always watched great movies. They've not went away. Just because fucking Ant-Man grosses 700 million and it's the black sheep of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the rest are grossing over $1 billion in their peak, doesn't mean there's not great movies coming out at the same time. They've always existed.
It's all to do with demographics, John.
Exactly.
Crime thrillers are not going to be aimed at families.
Yeah, and they were never making over $1 billion at the box office. I don't know why they've got this sort of misty-eyed look back to the 1990s and 80s as if Goodfellas was making $2 billion at the box office. They never made that kind of money. Like you said, Stephen, the reason these superhero movies made that kind of money, lightning in a bottle, people just enveloped in the universe. What's the word I'm looking for? Invested in the characters, and it's multi-demographic. So the grandchildren could go, the grandparents could go, and everything in between. That's how you make money. You ain't getting a multi-demographic crime movie. It's not going to happen. It has to be violent. Otherwise, it's not a fucking crime movie. So I don't get this bollocks they keep coming away with. Him and Scorsese not doing down their knowledge of film. They're obviously great filmmakers, know their shit. Great, but these kind of films have never went away. No one's making them. Eggers is making them. Tarantino's making them. Who's the other one? Blank on his name. Terrible.
Thomas Anderson.
What do you say? What's the second name?
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson. These guys have been making these movies for the last 20 years. Right in the midst of the Marvel stuff, movies have done great. I don't know what to fucking tell you, Michael, mate. You don't have to save films. Films are very much there. People are changing though, and that's why Heat 2 ain't going to work. I digress though. What are your thoughts on the two topics we touched on here? What's your thoughts on Lennon, McCartney and Bowie nearly getting together and forming a super group? I say nearly. It may have been David Bowie tripping off of shrooms or something and talking to his kettle in 74. But what's your thoughts on it? Is it something you would have liked to have seen with 2020 hindsight? Do you think it'd have been a good idea or a bad idea? Share your thoughts down below. Thoughts in Heat 2. Michael Mann ploughing ahead with a sequel which is a prequel to Heat from 1995. No Pacino, no De Niro, no Kilmer, no Danny Trejo. What was the other one, Stephen?
Can't remember.
There's another one. Great actor. A lot of great actors. None of them will be in this one. Share your thoughts down below about that. Anything you want to share, pop it down below in the comments section. Like the video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications on YouTube, follow button, notifications button over on Twitch to see us live over there as well. And until the next time, all that's left to be said is thank you for watching this, and bye bye.